And now for part 4 of my interview with Dr. Lowery Stokes Sims, curator at the Museum of Arts and Design. Let's talk for a minute about commercialization in art, because there are many people who say that art has become overly commercialized. Others feel that it hasn't. We had Paola Antonelli from the Museum of Modern Art on the show. She was advocating actually putting the prices of artworks in the Museum of Modern Art. What is your take on that?
Well, I think that certainly since the 1980s, with certain dips in the market, that people are concerned about the kinds of pricing that art has, and particularly for artists coming in at the beginning, and art becoming sort of like the ultimate invest. With the downturn in the market, you have certain adjustments. I think that it's a very interesting question for me now, because when we're working with design at the Museum of Arts and Design, like we have a show on now called Object Factory, and it's artists sort of working with industrial ceramics and sort of manipulating them to make non-utilitarian things. Young designers working with very old, venerable design places like Yadros, Nymphenburg, Sev, who our grandmothers bought their things, and doing innovative designs, and then also the new technology in ceramics. But it's very much part of the marketplace. So we actually have examples of the work in the galleries in our shops. And I'm working on a show now on global Africa, and I've been trying to sort of figure out how to organize it. And I sort of realized that with artisanal traditions like basket making and embroidery and things, that these have become important economic engines and vehicles in societies where there's no longer any farming, where mining is in the hands of foreign interests. I don't want to get into a kind of politics of the economics of the continent of Africa. So that you sort of realize that art is a part of economics. What museums have to do is to sort of tread this line to sort of make sure that we're not violating codes of ethics set out by the American Association of Museums. But I think that the whole idea of the commercial part of the art world and the not-for-profit part of the art world has always been a symbiotic one, because the commercial part nurtures the artists and sort of really gives them a way to work, and they certainly make things happen for museums and nonprofits by giving us discounts and sort of finding us collectors to sort of really have. So the whole thing is that we just have to be very careful about that. But art is a profession.
Right.
The art used to be a way that people made their living straight up. And you didn't become an artist because you were talented or inspired. You became an artist because your father was an artist, and you went through apprenticeship, journeyman, just like the unions, and then you became a full-fledged artist.
So Lowery, art is a profession, so what is next for you? What is the next chapter in your career?
Well, I think that I'm really settling in at the Museum of Arts and Design, and I'm sort of really very fascinated to sort of really see what kinds of global permutations are happening in the art world that sort of really relate to what we're doing and can sort of really move the agenda of the museum together. I'm very excited to be working with artists again, and to sort of really understand the global reach of the art world now. You can't just look at New York, you can't just look at LA. You're looking at Mumbai, you're looking at Dubai, you're looking at London, you're looking at Johannesburg. And it's really kind of interesting to see how artists move into the international attention, how they move into an international attention, coming from a place where there isn't an art center, and how the structure of the art world is almost breaking up, and that the glue, ironically, that's holding it together is the internet.
So the recent death of Michael Jackson represents the passing of the man who brought pop culture really to the world. What was the influence of pop culture on the art world?
Well, I think probably very tremendous. I mean, you can go back to Warhol to a certain extent, and pop art, there are different kinds of levels. I mean, certainly with pop art, it was, bringing the vernacular, advertising, sort of this kind of celebrity status media, image to the art world that was very, very important that, Jackson would have sort of played into, coming into the world in the 70s and 80s. But I think more so for younger people that it was interesting to sort of hear people talk about how in his struggles with his identity and in his a sort of global reach, how he sort of really internationalized the art world. I'm thinking about the video Black and White, you know, where at the end they're singing, it's black, it's white, and they're all morphing into sort of different people. Those seem like just gimmicks, you know, for a video, but it was a very important statement about how we're all the same, you know, because it's all coming from the same face and doing all these kind of fabulous morphing, you know, techniques that you have. I think also that, you know, in terms of celebrity status, that he certainly was an important force in sort of bringing us into that kind of exciting world of an individual who's creative, but at the same time we become almost morbidly fascinated with, you know, the details of their life. But, you know, he sort of created this image. It was the hat, it was the glove, the sequins jackets, the white socks, the, you know, those sort of goofy, very doofy loafers he used to wear, those short pants used to drive me crazy. And you sort of think about somebody like Jeff Koons, you know, who is, you know, an art world luminary now and sort of really brings a lot of his own life and certainly pop culture. I mean, he's sort of taking, you know,
the flower, the dog,
you know, like little bunny rabbits and sort of making them, casting them in steel. So I think that both Jackson and Koons and pop art also ask us to sort of think about the relative value of things in our lives also. How do we judge value? Is the value because it's advertised and we're made to think it's important? Is it the material it's made out of? Is it the presentation of it? So I think all of this comes together in this whole issue around branding, which we can't get away from.
Right, but is it also that pop art is so much more accessible? For many people who don't have a degree in art history, they can look at a work by Jeff Koons and it's rather readily accessible.
Well, I think the whole issue of accessibility is certainly there, but it's also topical. I mean, if Jeff Koons was living in, you know, 14th century Siena, he'd be doing wall paintings on the, you know, on the life of Christ, you know, and that was current for them. And all the different innovations that people like Giotto and Masaccio brought to that in sort of creating this representation of the world, you know, on the cusp of Europe going out and sort of discovering the world, was very important. So what they're doing now is they're engaging us in our environment and sort of making us aware of what might be considered aesthetic markers, whether you agree with them or not, in our worlds. And I think that we think of it as pop and vernacular and youthful and not serious because we're still very much wedded to traditional values that go back to European art or even classical African or Indian art. And one of the most exciting aspects, I think, of global culture now is how people are taking tradition and just sort of blowing it open with pop elements.
Well, Lowery Sims, thanks so much for being on Give and Take today.
It's my pleasure.